Hi everyone, my name is Mark Bates. I'm a metabolic health coach, and today's topic is the surprising truth behind the sugar diet weight loss. Yeah, a lot of people are hearing about this. In fact, this video is because it was suggested to me by one of my subscribers. They said, "Hey, we've been hearing about this. What's the truth here?" So I do listen and I respond to what people are looking for. Okay, sugar makes you fat, or does it? A surprising dietary trend is challenging nutritionists' long-held beliefs. People are consuming large amounts of sugar while restricting protein intake. And most shockingly, part of it is that many are reporting significant weight loss. This sugar diet typically involves consuming low protein, about 0.5 grams per pound of body weight, minimal fat, under 30 grams daily, and massive amounts of carbohydrates, primarily simple sugars. We're talking candy, fruit juice, maple syrup, and other foods that conventional wisdom says should make you gain weight rapidly. The initial reaction from most nutrition experts was complete dismissal. After all, decades of research have linked excessive sugar consumption to obesity, diabetes, and metabolic syndrome. However, recent findings suggest something unexpected might happen beneath the surface. FGF21, the metabolic master switch. This effect involves a hormone called fibroblast growth factor 21, FGF21. When protein intake is severely restricted, FGF21 levels increase dramatically by up to 361% in some studies. This hormone surge triggers fascinating changes in fat cell metabolism. Specifically, it alters mitochondria, the cellular power plants, to become less efficient at converting food energy into usable ATP. This inefficiency is beneficial for weight loss. The body burns more calories to produce the same energy, creating a significant metabolic advantage without additional exercise. A person on a 2,000 calorie diet might burn 400 calories daily through this mechanism alone. If you want more information on FGF21, I have a complete video on FGF21. Go look it up. Who should avoid the sugar diet? Okay. Despite the intriguing findings we just talked about, the sugar diet carries substantial risks and limitations that make it unsuitable for many individuals, if not most. Most critically, obesity appears to be an FGF21 resistant state. Individuals with obesity already have paradoxically elevated FGF21 levels, but their bodies don't respond appropriately to the hormone signals. Part of this reason is that FGF21 is released by the liver when it's under distress, and fatty liver and obesity stress your liver. So it's releasing a lot of FGF21 already, and you're not responding to it. This means that the people most interested in weight loss strategies may be the least likely to benefit from this approach. Think of it like insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. Having more insulin hormones floating around doesn't help if your cells can't respond to it. Genetic factors also play a significant role. Research shows that variants in the FGF21 gene influence food preferences and metabolic responses. Some people naturally crave more carbohydrates and sugars based on their genetic profile. These genetic variations are widespread, with some variants appearing in nearly 45% of the population. This helps explain why dietary responses vary so dramatically between individuals. Okay, real quick, it'd do me a big favor if you could like, subscribe, and hit the button to get notified when we release a new video. It really does help the channel, and I thank you in advance for that. Okay, the protein restriction diet versus the sugar diet. The scientific evidence suggests a crucial distinction. What works isn't a sugar diet, but a protein restricted diet. This distinction matters because focusing on sugar consumption misses the actual mechanism. The metabolic benefit comes from limiting protein, not from consuming sugar specifically. A ketogenic diet with low protein once again, still around that 9% of calories. And high fat would likely produce and has produced similar metabolic effects through the same FGF21 pathways. Right? If you look at some on a very highly restrictive ketogenic diet, it's called a 4-to-1 diet, where you're eating 80 to 90% of your calories as fat and the rest as limited protein. You get the same effect with FGF21 as you would with the supposed sugar diet. This research indicates that any macronutrient composition that achieves protein restriction could trigger the FGF21 response and subsequent metabolic boost. Remember, the protein restriction is what stresses the liver, causing it to release the FGF21 hormone. There are long-term concerns here, though, and nutritional gaps. Most studies on protein restriction last only a few weeks. The long-term effects remain largely unknown and potentially concerning. High sugar consumption, particularly fructose, presents significant challenges to liver health. While the small intestine can process moderate amounts of fructose, the massive quantities consumed on the sugar diet likely overwhelm this system. Right? So once again, people who are eating candy, for example, or simple sugars are getting glucose, which is one molecule of glucose and one molecule of fructose. Right? So that's your regular sugar. So you're getting a lot of fructose. When this happens, fructose reaches the liver in high concentrations, potentially leading to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and metabolic dysfunction over time. Nutritional deficiencies represent another primary concern. The sugar diet, as typically practiced, candy, juice, and simple syrups, provides virtually no essential micronutrients, fatty acids, or complete protein. Part of the whole process is minimizing proteins in the first place. While protein restriction drives the metabolic benefit, consuming mostly empty calories creates substantial nutritional gaps that could lead to serious health problems over time. A more sustainable approach. For those intrigued by the metabolic benefits of protein restriction, healthier approaches exist that don't rely on nutrient-poor sugar sources. Okay? You could do a well-formulated, low-protein ketogenic diet, and you should get the similar advantages of the metabolic activation of FGF21 without avoiding the blood sugar roller coaster and potential liver damage from high fructose intake. But remember, one of the things we talked about is that if you're already overweight, right, you are probably FGF21. You're not processing FGF21 properly, right? And or you're resistant to FGF21. So even if you're picking up a ketogenic diet and you go very low protein, this is not going to help you. Okay? Another strategy could involve periodic rather than chronic protein restriction. This might involve protein-restricted days interspersed with adequate protein intake, potentially providing metabolic benefits while minimizing risks of long-term deficiency. Okay? The big picture. The sugar diet phenomena reveals something profound about metabolism. Our bodies respond to macronutrient composition in ways that calorie counting alone cannot explain. The discovery that protein restriction can dramatically increase energy expenditure challenges simplistic calories in, calories out weight management models. It also highlights the remarkable metabolic flexibility humans possess. Our bodies adapt to various dietary patterns by adjusting hormonal signaling and energy efficiency. Perhaps most importantly, right? Our bodies adapt to various dietary patterns. Okay? And it demonstrates that individual responses to diet vary tremendously based on genetic factors, metabolic health, and physiological state. So, should you try the sugar diet? For most people, especially those with obesity, metabolic syndrome, diabetes, or liver issues, the answer is a definite no. The risks outweigh the potential benefits and the FGF21 response that drives the metabolic advantages may be blunted or absent. For metabolically healthy individuals curious about protein restrictions effects, safer approaches exist that don't rely on nutrient-poor sugar sources. And also remember, the study that this is all based on was based on healthy young men over a very short period of time. So, for women, the study doesn't say anything about how it affects women. I would suggest, based upon how women's hormonal systems react to low protein, that's probably not a good option. The most valuable takeaway isn't that sugar helps with weight loss. Instead, protein intake significantly influences metabolism through hormonal pathways we're only beginning to understand. Okay? In the carnivore and keto community, there is a trend called protein sparing days, where you're eating very little protein based on this very concept of the FGF21 response. But once again, it's only recommended for people who are already highly metabolically healthy and thin. Otherwise, you're probably wasting your time and you're hurting yourself significantly. Okay? The sugar diet works for some people, not because sugar is magical, but because protein restriction triggers powerful metabolic adaptations. Understanding this distinction helps separate the signal from the noise in nutrition science. As with most biological systems, the answer isn't binary. The body's response to macronutrient exists on a spectrum influenced by countless variables. The complexity explains why nutrition debates often generate more heat than light. The actual value in studying phenomena like the sugar diet lies not in finding universal dietary rules, but in uncovering the mechanisms that explain individual variations in metabolic response. This knowledge brings us closer to truly personalized nutrition approaches, which are tailored to individual genetics, metabolic health, and specific goals rather than one-size-fits-all recommendations. The most important discoveries in nutrition science often come from investigating counterintuitive findings. Despite its limitations and risks, the sugar diet has inadvertently illuminated fascinating aspects of human metabolism that merit further exploration. Now, real quickly though, let me just get this down. What are the problems with a very low protein diet? Okay? Specifically those around 9% or less of total calories from protein. Short-term consequences in the first several weeks to the first couple months. Muscle breakdown and weakness. Inadequate protein intake forces the body to catabolize muscle to supply essential amino acids. Symptoms: fatigue, weakness, slower recovery from exercise or injury. Impaired immune function. Autobodies and immune cells are protein-based, leads to increased infection risk, slower wound healing, and poor inflammatory control. Hunger and cravings. Protein is the most satisfying macronutrient. Low intake can increase hunger, driving compensatory overeating of carbs or fats. Medium-term consequences, between 1 and 6 months. Loss of lean body mass, right? Hair loss, brittle nails, poor skin health, impaired detoxification, mood, and cognitive issues. Long-term consequences, if you do this for more than 6 months. Severe sarcopenia and frailty. This is when your bones actually start to break down on you, and you start getting frail, brittle bones. Metabolic dysfunction. Okay? Remember, you're eating that much sugar, you're getting all kinds of insulin flowing through your body constantly, which is just not healthy. We've discussed that in multiple videos. Okay? Reproductive and hormonal disruption, especially for women. Remember, the study did not include women. You need sex hormone production. So amino acids are essential for this, right? For both men and women. You might lose your sex drive, guys, if you follow this. Okay? Menstrual cycles are definitely in play. Fertility definitely is in play. And libido for both men and women are definitely in play. If you reduce your proteins too much, you're going to take all that away. Edema, right? Like symptoms. A very low protein can impair albumin production. leading to fluid retention, swelling, and bloating. Most of the bloating you see the kids who don't get to eat very much is because of the lack of protein in their diets. Okay? Impaired longevity and regeneration. Protein, especially leucine, triggers mTOR, essential for muscle repair, tissue regeneration, and stem cell activation. Right? You don't get enough protein, none of that's going to happen. Okay? Who's most at risk? Older adults, women, especially those who are post-menopause, people recovering from illness, surgery, or injury, children and adolescents should never go on this diet. Vegans or plant-based dieters who rely on low-protein plants anyways, they need to be very careful about this diet. Okay? Remember, your recommended minimum is 1.2 to 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of lean body mass, right? 0.8 grams per kilogram of lean body mass is considered the minimum. Here, we're talking about an extremely low protein amount. Okay. What do I know about this diet firsthand? What I will tell you is that back in college, I used to hang around with bodybuilders. I wasn't a big bodybuilder myself. I was more of a power lifter, but I hung around in the gyms with the bodybuilders. And when they were cutting for competition, this is the type of diet they would eat. Very low protein, almost no fat, and lots of sugar, so they would have the energy to keep doing the workouts. Okay? That does work because they normally only cut for a week or two at most. The idea is just to really shrink everything and get down just to the muscle mass. That worked because they weren't worrying about losing much muscle mass in that time because these are bodybuilders. They're in the gym 2 to 3 hours a day anyways, or more, pumping iron. If you're not a bodybuilder, and you're not a male, and you're not young and healthy, I strongly cannot suggest this diet. Okay? Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. If you have any questions, leave me a comment. If you have a video you'd love me to do for you, put it in the comments. Let me get to work on it. Thank you all. Enjoy.